It was August 18, 1981. The sweltering summer sun blazed over the Mediterranean Sea, glinting off the silver hulls of American warships moving steadily off the Libyan coast. The air was thick with tension, and beneath that still sky, conflict seemed inevitable. Out from a Libyan airbase, two MiG-25 Foxbat fighters roared into the air, their engines screaming across the desert as they accelerated toward the coastline. Radar operators had just picked up intruders, aircraft from the United States Navy carrier group that had entered waters Libya claimed as its own. The MiG pilots, operating under strict orders, climbed high and turned out to sea. Below them, far on the horizon, they could see the faint silhouettes of aircraft carriers and escorting destroyers, an unmistakable sign of American presence. To the Libyans, this was a challenge to their sovereignty. To the Americans, it was a deliberate test of international freedom of navigation. One of the Libyan pilots adjusted his oxygen mask and scanned the horizon ahead, when something caught his eye. Out of nowhere, an American F-14 Tomcat had slipped into formation right beside him. For a few surreal moments, the two adversaries flew side by side, no more than a few dozen meters apart. The Libyan pilot turned his head in disbelief. Inside the American jet, the pilot calmly raised a hand in a mock salute. Behind him, the radar intercept officer leaned forward and took a photograph. It was a silent display of dominance, a clear reminder of who controlled the skies. Realizing the danger, the Libyan pilot instinctively pulled away. He knew what it meant when an F-14 appeared on one side. Somewhere behind him, another Tomcat was already in a perfect firing position. Completely outmaneuvered, the MiGs banked hard and returned toward the coast. Back aboard the U.S. Navy's USS Nimitz, the American pilots, Lieutenant Lawrence Muczynski and his radar intercept officer, James Anderson, couldn't help but laugh. Their flight leader, Commander Henry Kleeman, and his own RIO, David Venlet, joined in on the radio chatter. The morning had been little more than a cat-and-mouse game. But beneath the humor, everyone aboard the Nimitz knew how easily these encounters could spiral into something far deadlier. The roots of this confrontation traced back to the Libyan government's claim that the entire Gulf of Sidra was part of its territorial waters. In 1973, Muammar Gaddafi had drawn a so-called line of death across the Gulf and warned that any foreign aircraft or ships crossing it would be attacked. The United States refused to recognize this claim. According to international law, the waters were open to navigation. And so, as part of freedom of navigation operations, the U.S. Navy deliberately sailed through the disputed area to challenge Libya's assertion. On the first day of maneuvers, American aircraft encountered over 70 Libyan jets. Each time, the Libyans were turned away without a single missile fired. To the American pilots, it almost felt like a sport, a dangerous game of brinkmanship in the blazing sky. Commander Kleeman later described that first day as all fun and games. But the following morning, things would turn very real. At dawn on August 19th, the Mediterranean horizon glowed a pale orange as the Nimitz flight deck came alive. Two pairs of F-14 Tomcats were prepared for launch, among them Fast Eagle 102, flown by Commander Kleeman and RIO David Venlet, and Fast Eagle 107, piloted by Lieutenant Muczynski with his RIO James Anderson. Their mission was routine: patrol the airspace south of the carrier group, monitor radar returns, and intercept any aircraft approaching the fleet. For over an hour, the patrol was quiet. Then, radar operators aboard the Tomcats picked up an unidentified contact approaching from the Libyan coast, heading straight toward them. Calm and confident after the previous day's uneventful encounters, Kleeman reported the contact to the carrier and began his intercept. Muczynski, flying several miles off his leader's wing, adjusted formation to cover the approach. As the distance closed, Kleeman's radar confirmed two separate targets. Moments later, he caught visual sight: two Soviet-built Su-22 fighter attack jets flying tight formation at low altitude, coming directly at them. At that exact moment, Muczynski's radar went dead. The signal vanished, but he continued forward, relying only on visual tracking, determined not to lose the contact. Then it happened. From beneath one of the Su-22's wings flashed a bright orange spark, followed by a streak of smoke. The Libyan had just fired an AA-2 Atoll missile. "Two fitters have fired on my leader," Muczynski shouted over the radio. Kleeman instantly broke left, pulling his Tomcat into a high-G defensive turn. The missile shot past his canopy and exploded harmlessly in open air. As the smoke cleared, both Libyan jets roared by, crossing head-on. Kleeman's voice cut through the radio chatter. "This is 102. We've been fired upon." For a split second, time seemed to freeze. The unspoken rules had been broken. Now the Americans were cleared to fight back. Kleeman's immediate command to his wingman was simple and direct. 107, get after the one who shot. Muczynski yanked the stick, rolling into a hard 180-degree turn, his Tomcat's wings flexing under the pressure. In seconds, he was behind the enemy pair, locked on the lead Su-22. The two Libyan pilots split apart in opposite directions, but Muczynski stayed glued to the tail of the one who had fired the missile. Every turn, every climb, the F-14 matched him with ease. The Tomcat, built for speed and agility, was in its element. Muczynski armed his AIM-9L Sidewinder and pressed the trigger, but nothing happened. A malfunction warning flashed across his console. The missile was dead. Meanwhile, Commander Kleeman had already looped back toward the second Libyan. He locked onto his target and prepared to fire, but the Su-22 suddenly turned toward the rising sun, a dangerous move for both pilots. Kleeman knew the heat-seeking Sidewinder could easily confuse the sun's glare for an engine signature. He held his fire, waiting. 10 long seconds that felt like an eternity. Then the Libyan turned away. That was the moment Kleeman had been waiting for. He squeezed the trigger. The missile tore free from Fast Eagle 102, leaving behind a thick trail of smoke. It streaked across the morning sky and smashed into the Su-22's tail, detonating with a flash that sent debris scattering into the air. The Libyan pilot ejected as his burning aircraft spiraled down into the sea below. From miles away, Muczynski's REO spotted the explosion. "Someone's been hit," he shouted. For a tense moment, Muczynski feared it might be Kleeman, until the radio came alive with the calm voice of his commander. "Affirmative. We've shot one down." With one Libyan jet destroyed, Muczynski still had the second Su-22 in his sights. He keyed his mic. "Do you want me to take him?" Kleeman's reply was quick and clear. "That's a firm. Shoot him down." The young lieutenant pressed the trigger again, launching his final Sidewinder. The missile roared off the rail but appeared to fly straight and level, drifting out of view. For a heartbeat, it seemed like another failure. Frustrated, Muczynski prepared to switch to his M61 Vulcan cannon. But then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw the missile curve back into view. It had found its target. The Sidewinder struck the Libyan Su-22 squarely in its fuselage. The explosion lit up the sky, scattering fragments and flames as the aircraft disintegrated mid-air. Muczynski jerked back on the stick, pulling 10 Gs to avoid the debris cloud. His body crushed into the seat as he climbed sharply upward. Below, 2 parachutes bloomed. The Libyan pilots had ejected safely. The radio crackled again as command aboard the Nimitz finally relayed the official order. "Fast Eagle 102, 107, you are cleared to defend yourselves." Kleeman responded, his voice steady, almost matter-of-fact. "Roger that, 102 and 107. 2 enemy kills. The dogfight was over." The engagement had lasted less than 5 minutes. On board the Nimitz, the Combat Information Center erupted in motion. Technicians tracked the fading radar blips of the downed Su-22s, while officers relayed confirmation to the Pentagon and 6th Fleet headquarters. Both Libyan pilots, Captain Belkacem, Msik al-Zintani and 1st Lieutenant Mokhtar el-Arabi al-Jafari, were recovered later that morning by Libyan rescue helicopters. Miraculously, neither was seriously injured. Despite the ferocity of the encounter, the skirmish remained an isolated incident. No further Libyan aircraft attempted to engage the U.S. Navy that day, and by nightfall, the operation in the Gulf of Sidra was declared complete. For the Americans, it was a demonstration of skill, discipline, and restraint. The Navy had not provoked the fight, but once attacked, its pilots responded with precision and professionalism. When the carrier group returned to port, Kleeman and Muczynski were greeted with admiration by their peers. Yet no formal decorations were awarded. The event was classified as a defensive action, a clean, justified response to aggression, but politically sensitive given the tense relations between Washington and Tripoli. Internationally, the shoot-down further strained U.S.-Libyan relations. Gaddafi denounced the incident as an act of American hostility, while the U.S. maintained it was a matter of self-defense in international airspace. The truth lay somewhere in between, a collision of pride, politics, and precision flying. The brief dogfight over the Gulf of Sidra would become one of the most studied aerial engagements of the Cold War era. Military analysts dissected every radio call and radar trace, using the battle to refine air combat tactics and engagement rules. It showcased the speed and versatility of the F-14 Tomcat, and proved the value of calm decision-making under extreme pressure. Years later, Hollywood would draw inspiration from these real-life events. Writers developing the film Top Gun used the Tomcat's duels with Libyan and Soviet-built fighters as the foundation for their cinematic dogfights. In many ways, the movie's spirit of competition, danger, and mastery of the skies echoed what had truly unfolded over the Mediterranean in 1981. Fast Eagle 102, the Tomcat flown by Commander Kleeman that day, survived its service and was later restored by a group of Navy veterans. In 2016, it went on display at the Midland Army Airfield Museum in Texas, its gleaming frame standing as a monument to the precision, bravery, and discipline of its crew. Visitors can still see the aircraft today, preserved exactly as it looked during that historic mission, a silent witness to one of the most remarkable moments of Cold War aviation. The Gulf of Sidra incident remains a reminder of how close the world once stood to open conflict, where a single missile or misread radar blip could ignite a war. But it also demonstrates the razor-thin line between professionalism and catastrophe, and the extraordinary skill of the men who kept that line intact. 2 American pilots, 2 Libyan adversaries, 4 supersonic jets, and a confrontation that could have changed the course of history. Instead, it became a lesson in discipline, courage, and the mastery of flight. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe for more real-life military encounters and true stories from the skies. Thank you for watching, and until next time, fly safe.